Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shapiro was commenting on one Donald J. Trump's Gaza plan, his plan for Gaza, and he was pretty happy about it. Actually, he responded to the critics of this crazy plan saying, propose your own. If you don't have a better alternative, why don't you shut the hell up? Hear what he has to say about Donald J. Trump's unbelievable, bold, incredible plan for Gaza.
Folks, let Donald J. Trump cook. So last night, President Trump gave a press conference, an absolutely stunning, groundbreaking, timeline-changing press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he announced his plan for the day after in the Gaza Strip. And people are going absolutely insane over this plan in the Gaza Strip. Now, before we get to what exactly that plan is, the first thing that we have to understand is that all of the conventional wisdom, all of the State Department approved conventional wisdom for decades has led to full-scale disaster in the Middle East. It has led to an intractable, multi-decade problem of a radicalized Palestinian population that supports terrorism rather than any regime that would actually allow for peace, prosperity, and the building of a livable life. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. Today, by polling data, the Palestinian people still support Hamas after the complete destruction of the Gaza Strip, after and in response to Hamas killing 1,200 Israelis and taking 250 into captivity, where many of them were murdered, many of them were abused, and many of them still are, including American citizens. So, whatever the conventional wisdom says is wrong, and it has been wrong. And this is where President Trump has always had a different way of thinking about this. He's always had a different way of thinking about this. President Trump thinks outside the box. And what that has led to is more peace and prosperity in the region. People who think inside the box have led to some of the most intractable, most violent, worst conflict in humanity. Donald Trump has thrown the conventional wisdom out, and what he has replaced it with is common sense understanding of reality and outside the box thinking. And the result was the Abraham Accords. If you look back to Trump term number one, perhaps the most stunning example of President Trump thinking differently was the Abraham Accords. Everybody said he was not going to be able to get any sort of deal done in the Middle East. Instead, he ended up with the first true Arab-Israeli peace deals in modern history. He didn't win the Nobel Prize for that because the left hates him too much, but that was all Nobel Prize worthy, and everyone knows it, including the left. Barack Obama won the Nobel Prize for existing. Donald Trump did not win the Nobel Prize for a variety of peace agreements between Israel and its Arab neighbors. And if Donald Trump had been reelected in 2020, he was just weeks away from brokering a Saudi-Israeli Abraham Accord. That is because Donald Trump does not think inside the box. So here's what the conventional wisdom says, and then we'll get to what exactly Donald Trump is proposing that is just exploding brains across the conventional wisdom spectrum. The conventional wisdom has said some of these following propositions with regard to Israel and the Palestinians, the Gaza Strip, Judea and Samaria. One, the way that you get to Middle Eastern peace is by solving the Palestinian problem first, by solving the intractable Palestinian issue first, and then peace blooms across the Middle East. This has been the going conventional wisdom for decades in the Middle East. And it was wrong. It was stupid. It is wrong. It has been stupid. Oslo was an ongoing process. The Oslo Accords, which were originally put forward in the early 1990s, have been ongoing for 3 decades, and they are one of the giant failures in the history of diplomacy. They've resulted in more death, more carnage, more destruction, less safety, and all-out war in the Middle East. President Trump threw out that conventional wisdom. What he said was, listen, we have an intractable problem over here. A deeply radicalized population that wants to completely destroy its neighbor. The Palestinian population has no interest in a quote-unquote two-state solution, living side by side in peace and prosperity. And so if there's going to be peace in the Middle East, we are going to take that issue, we're going to put it to the side, and instead we are going to look to the common security and economic interests of Israel and its other Arab neighbors. And the Abraham Accords was the result. Everyone said it couldn't be done. Everyone said it was stupid. Everybody said that it was backwards and wrong and unsophisticated and naive and not nuanced. And it turns out it was exactly right, because Donald Trump took the conventional wisdom and he set it on fire. John Kerry, moron that he is, historic dolt, wrong about every single thing in his entire long, useless life. John Kerry, former Secretary of State, he said that peace would never happen in the Middle East unless the Palestinian issue was put front and center. And he was proved wrong at every single turn. More conventional wisdom. The other countries in the Middle East deeply care about the establishment of a Palestinian state. This has supposedly been a top priority. Okay, all of history shows this is not true. When Egypt was in control of the Gaza Strip from 1948 to 1967, was there an independent Palestinian state? Of course, the answer is no. When Jordan was in control of Judea and Samaria from 1948 to 1967, was there an independent Palestinian state? No. Today, there could be an independent Palestinian state in Jordan, and the Hashemite dynasty says no, despite the fact that the vast majority of the population of Jordan actually is Palestinian. Not only are the surrounding Middle Eastern states uninterested in a Palestinian state, they don't want one because they know that it will be a terror haven. The big reason that so many Arab countries, Muslim countries in the region don't want to take in Palestinian refugees is because they are afraid it will destabilize their country, and they are right. It destabilized Jordan when the PLO was located there in the early 1970s, leading to the full-scale expulsion of tens of thousands of Palestinians as well as the PLO. Lebanon, which used to be a Christian state, was completely overrun by the PLO and turned into a hellhole. There are Syrian refugee camps that still contain Palestinians because no matter how hellish Syria is, whoever has been in charge there, whether it's Assad or now whether it's HTS, they're not particularly interested in fighting another front war with a radicalized Palestinian population. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, Kuwait expelled tens of thousands of Palestinians who had sided with Saddam Hussein. So the idea that anyone in the Middle East is deeply interested in the establishment of a Palestinian state is a lie made up by Westerners, and Middle Eastern states have gone along with that lie because it's been a convenient way of shifting blame to Israel for their own internal failures and of prying concessions out of Westerners. But it was always a lie, and Donald Trump knows it's a lie, and that's why he has said repeatedly that the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, they don't really care about a Palestinian state. That is a side quest. Other conventional wisdom, that the way that you upset the Arab street is when you acknowledge reality. That if you acknowledge reality, the Arab street will go wild. It will be gigantic war in the Middle East. The most obvious example of this being the conventional wisdom that if the United States actually moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Israel and the Jewish people, that if that were to happen, then the entire Middle East would go up in flames. And it turns out nothing happened. Nothing, because that was a reality, and acknowledging reality on the ground is smarter than pretending reality away. Similarly, the conventional wisdom said that any move to acknowledge territorial sovereignty by Israel in disputed areas, like, for example, the Golan Heights, would end with further war. Wrong. Not only is that untrue, it is the reverse. When Israel has been able to defend territory, the world gets more peaceful, not less. The world will be more peaceful because Israel is currently occupying the other side of Mount Hermon in Syria rather than, for example, HTS or Al-Qaeda. Other conventional wisdom.
I just want to note, I haven't seen Ben Shapiro this animated in a long time. He is going completely off, and he's 100% correct. Giving Israel more land, pretending that, or America taking over, is one of the best ideas ever, because you have an American presence in the region. You can keep the Arab nations at bay. And the fact that he did this also sort of makes the other Arab countries think to themselves, what's the solution? What are we going to do? If we don't want America in the region, you have to come up with a better solution.
What the Palestinians really want is peace and a thriving democracy. There is zero evidence adduced to this idea. None. In fact, every single piece of evidence is precisely the contrary. The Palestinians, by every piece of polling data ever done, do not, in fact, support a thriving democracy. They do not, in fact, support a quote-unquote two-state solution. They do not support peace with Israel. In fact, their entire raison d'etre, the entire reason for the establishment of a Palestinian people, which was an agglomeration of a variety of people from different areas who over time accreted in British Mandate Palestine, largely because of the upward economic trajectory created by Jews who'd been moving in. The entire raison d'etre was the disestablishment of a possible Jewish state there. So to give up that aspiration would be to recognize a thing that is unrecognizable for the vast majority of Palestinians. There is yet to be a single poll ever showing that Palestinians favor a two-state solution with Israel and the Palestinians living side by side. Yet the conventional wisdom likes to pretend that's not the case and then bang their head consistently against a wall and then yell at the Israelis for being so intransigent about not wanting to exterminate themselves. Donald Trump does not accept that conventional wisdom. He recognizes that Israel is not going away. Other conventional wisdom, that the Palestinians must never be allowed to leave a rubble-strewn, war-torn area, even if they want to, because somehow it facilitates peace to keep would-be refugees in an unlivable situation for a decade. with no infrastructure, with no jobs, with no economy other than the trash foreign aid that has been used historically by terrorist groups to build terror tunnels and stock up on weaponry. That was the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that the best plan in the Gaza Strip was to pour billions of dollars into Hamas to facilitate humanitarian aid, which went directly to building terror tunnels. The only infrastructure built there, the only infrastructure that has been built there over the course of the last 15 years. And somehow the conventional wisdom was give it more money, more air, make sure that there are more. Why do you think Egypt shut the border? Why do you think the Rafah crossing is closed? That is not because of the Jews. That is because of the Egyptians. Finally, the conventional wisdom says that you cannot facilitate population movement in this area. Now, I just have a question. Why is this the only area on earth where even if people want to leave, you can't facilitate the population movement? Israel not only facilitated the population movement of Jews out of Gaza, it forced people who didn't want to leave out of Gaza in 2005. Literally took cities filled with 8,000 Jews and removed them forcibly with Israeli soldiers. It turns out that according to the conventional wisdom, the only people who can be forcibly removed from a particular area in this particular area are Jews. And the people who certainly cannot be moved under any circumstances are Palestinians living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Those people can't move at all. It doesn't matter if Kuwait kicks them out or Jordan kicks them out or Lebanon kicks them out or Egypt refuses to take them. It doesn't matter whether they live in refugee camps in Syria. None of that makes a difference. It doesn't matter if literally hundreds of thousands or even millions of people are forced out of Syria due to civil conflict. And so they end up in Turkey or even in Europe. That's all fine and dandy. But the minute anybody says that people who even want to leave the Gaza Strip because they don't wish to live in the rubble of Khan Yunis under the thumb of Hamas, then all of a sudden the conventional wisdom says, no. They must be forced to remain. Okay, here's the thing. Trump has ignored all of this conventional wisdom because it's wrong and because it's stupid. And Donald Trump thinks outside the box. Here are Donald Trump's generalized premises when it comes to the Middle East. 1, intractable problems are, wait for it, intractable, and they're not going away. And simply saying, like a mantra, two-state solution, democracy, living side by side, peace, doesn't make it magically happen. If you just say it over and over and over, not only does it not happen, it ends up facilitating the opposite, because it turns out that terrorist groups and radicalized populations take advantage of your naivete and your stupidity in order to build up their own weaponry so as to do things like October 7th. They make common cause with terror states like Iran. They make common cause with the Houthis and with Hezbollah. They do all of that because they understand Western weakness and Western stupidity. So failing to recognize intractable problems is dangerous. Recognizing intractable problems and not banging your head against the wall is actually a necessity. Recognizing that reality is how you get to things like the Abraham Accords. Other recognitions of reality. Israel is not going away, nor should it.
Especially since the Arabs know if they attack and, they do whatever, they kill as many Israelis as possible, they're always going to be coming back to the same solution. If they want, they can always take a two-state solution because the West is always open to it. Every single Western country, two-state solution. After October 7th, even after October 7th, two-state solution. It's always been on the table, and as long as it stays on the table, there's no harm for the Arabs. Like, what's bad for the Arabs if they attack the Jews? Nothing. I mean, unless the Jews retaliate, meaning the Western countries do not care. Whatever happens, a two-state solution is always on the table.
And President Trump understands that. Underlying so much of the discussion over the past several decades has been this idea that if Israel just keeps giving up land and makes itself more and more unsafe, that magically peace will break out. Again, an idiotic idea. And underlying that is a baseline idea that if Israel disappeared, well, maybe the world would be a better place. Israel is not going to disappear. Israel is not going to go away. They're not going to surrender. They're not going to cut off their own heads. And after October 7th, they're certainly not going to allow the creation of a terror state in the heartland of the land that Israel currently is on. That is not a thing that's going to happen. Recognizing that reality is just reality. You can like it, you cannot like it. It's just the reality. And Trump plays in the world of reality. And finally, President Trump understands, again, that the conventional wisdom that all of this is central to the Middle East is wrong and a lie. He recognizes that it turns out Saudi Arabia has its own priorities that don't actually involve the Palestinians. Like, for example, economic development. That is the big priority of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. What he wants more than anything is a non-oil based economy with a future, Because one of the things that's happened that's totally transformed the Middle East over the course of the last couple of decades is the fracking revolution in the United States, the complete revision of global oil dominance by the Middle East, so that actually the United States is a net exporter of LNG, has completely reshaped how the entire globe does energy. And so Mohammed bin Salman, who's sitting on a bunch of oil, is recognizing that technological developments mean that he must move along with the tech or he's going to lose out and his regime becomes unstable. Trump recognizes that. The same thing is true of UAE. The same thing is true, yes, even of Qatar, which is going to be made to come around. Okay, the reality is that people in the Middle East have interests that are completely disconnected and, in fact, antithetical to the interests of the terror state that a state of Palestine would be. So all of this is lead up to Trump's actual proposal. Because here's the thing. Everybody's saying, oh, it's so out of the box. It's so crazy. It's so wild. How could he? Because all of your ideas are stupid and failed. That is the reason. You wonder how we got here? The answer is we tried it your way, the conventional wisdom way, for 80 years. And not only is it a fail, it is one of the giantest fails in the history of foreign policy fails. That is how you end up with President Trump thinking outside the box. Now, I don't know whether President Trump's vision is going to come to fruition here. I don't know whether it's an opening gambit in a broader negotiation. And we'll get to all of that. What I do know is that all of the same conventional wisdom morons who said that the Abraham Accords would never happen were wrong. All those same conventional wisdom morons who said moving the Jerusalem embassy would set the entire Middle East on fire were wrong and stupid. All the same conventional wisdom dolts who suggested that pressuring Israel in the middle of a war was somehow going to result in more peace rather than more war, they were wrong and stupid. So let the man cook. He did it better than you. He did it better than you, and he's doing it better than you. Okay, this bizarre idea that people need to be trapped in this zone. There's polling data, by the way, showing that a huge percentage of Palestinians, if they could get out, would want to. Okay, again, the question would be the alternative. What is the conventional wisdom has been tried for 80 years, gang? And guess what? It has ended in nothing but death, despair, war, terrorism, the training of young kids to become future terrorists. That's what it has ended in. Okay, so President Trump says, what's the United States' role in all this? Well, I see a long-term ownership position is what President Trump has to say. Now, again, there are a lot of details that have to be filled in. There has to be a plan that's filled in. And again, this could be a negotiating gambit in order to get the Arab states to actually say, we don't want what Trump is talking about, so we are going to get involved in the rebuilding and guarantee the security of the Gaza Strip. Now, this could be a lot of different things. What it isn't is the conventional things that have already been tried and have failed 100,000 times over the course of the years. I saw a tweet last night from one of these conventional wisdom fools saying, well, why don't we just say that the people in Gaza get to stay in Gaza and live side by side in peace with the Israelis? Oh, I don't know. Maybe reality intervened. Maybe reality should at some point clock people in the head. It turns out it clocked the Israelis in the head on October 7th. Again, it is hilarious to me that Trump says, I want to turn this area into a thriving center of commerce. I want to turn it into a Riviera on the Middle East. And people are saying, how could you be so cruel to the Palestinians? Your alternatives, please. Your conventional wisdom has, I'm just going to say it over and over and over because it's true. It's true. You keep saying the same thing over and over and over like a fool or a madman. And then nothing changes. The place keeps being a terror-ridden hellhole. And your response to the possible changing of that area into something that could actually be good is that you're upset about it in some way. Like that's your first response. I have a feeling that maybe you might have a slightly different agenda.
He hit the nail on the head there, and he should have laid out the agenda. The agenda is obviously that they need the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip because they need the Palestinian cause to continue. And by them, I mean the Palestinians in the West, the fake Palestinians, the Palestinians that are using that movement as a life purpose. The Palestinians in Gaza, on the other hand, would leave at the first opportunity. I sincerely believe that if they opened the Rafah border to Egypt, 50% of Gaza would pile out like this. It would be 50% population decrease in Gaza like this overnight because they want out. They want to get the hell out of there. And the idea that we have to trap them in is actually inhumane. I say you don't have to emigrate. You don't have to push them out. You don't have to ethnically cleanse them. Just open the border. Open the border. they will leave. For more, subscribe to this channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. That's buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. I'll put it up on the screen for you here. And you can also check us out on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook as well. Thank you, and have a good one.